Okay, so I know the last couple of weeks have been techie, okay? Not very creative. It's a necessary evil. We have to get through this really important sequence, or this really important step in our sequence, to be able to finish out our model and get something that's workable in a real-time rendering engine. As you guys are well aware, what we produce at a Mudbox is pure digital sculpture, but it's not going to work and be integrated into a real-time rendering pipeline. We have to be able to, lower the resolution of that sculpture to like a medium resolution, if you will, okay? So that we can UV it and then texture paint it, and then animate it and get it into our engine, okay? So our pipeline, our sequence is very, very long, and it's kind of one of the challenging parts about being a game artist, is understanding and participating in all these sequence steps, and really being aware of their role and their larger purpose, okay? Because each one of these kind of goalposts plays a direct impact on what we're able to produce, okay? Today, we're going to have some fun. Today, we're going to kind of return to the creative aspects of working inside the game art pipeline, and we're going to talk exclusively today about the texturing pipeline. And we have some really great tools that that we're going to be employing that will hopefully allow us to create some really great engaging textures. So, what do I mean by textures? Let's take a look at some ideas here real fast. And I'm going to return to Sketchfab, okay? Because all of my stuff, not all of it, but a lot of my stuff has ended up on Sketchfab these days, okay? I know I've shown this in class, so I apologize. I'll look at my Stegosaurus here real quick. I like my Stegosaurus. All right. So here's my good old Stegosaurus. Okay, I like Sketchfab for a number of different reasons. One of the things that that Sketchfab allows us to do is to throw up the wireframes. We can actually start seeing the raw. We create the geometry, and then we have to create the textures after the fact. Okay. In the past, really our only medium and our only really method for creating the textures used to be rolling it through Photoshop. And that's a good place to begin, because Photoshop has some of the best image editing tools on the face of the planet. But what it didn't allow us to do was to immediately see how that texture was going to look on the model, right? Think about it. We're trying to create a custom texture map on a flat two-dimensional surface that then, thanks to our UVs that we created last week, then get wrapped around the model like shrink wrap, okay? Like wrapping paper on a birthday present, okay? We want to be able to have the final finished birthday present sitting in front of us in 3D so that we can then paint on the outsides. Have you guys ever done that before? Like have some wrapping paper, you put like, my boys and I do it all the time. We just take brown paper bag, kind of material. That's one of the ways we recycle is we reuse as much as we can, right? And then my guys love making their own wrapping paper, right? Because they get a color on it, we can write notes and shapes and stuff. It's a lot of fun. Well, we're kind of doing the exact same thing, just on really, really complex, very complex wrapped birthday presents, okay? One of the tools that have kind of exploded in popularity over the last period of time is an app called Substance Painter, okay? And Substance Painter and the entire Substance ecosystem has really become the cornerstone of our texturing pipeline. This is a defined job out there in the real world. Some people are excellent, and I mean excellent, excellent sculptors, but can't paint the textures, and vice versa, right? So this is its own category of artists inside the game art pipeline. You can be a dedicated texture artist. You're a triple threat if you can make the model, you can make the UVs, and you can make the textures, right? If you can do all three of those really, really well, I can tell you probably a dozen game companies that want to hire you immediately, because not everyone does that, right? Usually you're one or the other. You're really good at modeling, but really horrible at the textures, or the other way around, okay? We're lucky to be playing in this sandbox. The tools that we're going to be using are industry standard tools. Over the last 10 years, they've gone from this little French company that wanted to explore around with procedural texturing into literally probably the cornerstone of the entire texturing world. They are a one-trick pony. All they do is make textures and allow us as artists to make our own textures. It's a company called Algorithmic, and I never can spell their name correctly. So this is literally how I find their website. I just do a Google search for Substance Painter, and it's always the first hit, okay? Because Algorithmic is there's the URL. Algorithmic, that's the official name of the company. And they have some phenomenal tools, and I mean phenomenal tools that allow us to paint our textures on the model, right? And we're going to be exploring one of their two kind of flagship tools in this class. They have two. They have Substance Painter, which we're going to use, and they also have something called Substance Designer, which is a little bit more advanced, and we're going to save that for GCOM 426, our advanced game design class. Okay, both tools are amazing, and you should be using them. There's no reason not to. The tools are so good that they've been adopted almost wholesale by the visual effects and high-end animation industry as well. So the tool set is kind of growing in its influence. It's not just the game crews that are using it. It's now showing up at ILM or DNEG and Pixar for that matter. Okay, they're everywhere because they're just that good. And we're going to be using these tools here, inside of City College. Now, I just noticed this, and they may have absolutely and honest just changed this in preparation for Game Developers Conference, but I love this. Substance by Adobe, okay? Because starting at about mid-January or so, they made an announcement that Adobe had purchased outright Algorithmic, and it's now going to fall under the Adobe Creative Cloud. Kind of shows you how really fantastic of a tool this is and how widespread it's used. Because if it's attracted the attention of Adobe, that means it has a focus. It means it has a purpose and a role inside of a very large community. So I'm honestly quite excited to be part of the Adobe family. It's going to be neat to see how this tool and this whole ecosystem continues to grow. One thing that I would really recommend is that you explore this world and this community. You're not going to get 100% of what you need to know on how to be a texture artist in this class. This conversation is very, very, very deep, okay? Shoot, I mean, I do a lot of texture painting, and I love it. It's my favorite part of the entire pipeline. This is where our cool little objects honestly come to life, and they turn into these wonderful characters, okay? And I'm still learning stuff, right? There's always something to learn. This conversation is pretty complex. The tools are ridiculous. They're amazing, okay? And over the next 2 weeks, we're going to be exploring Substance very directly. Now, for us internally in our class, ultimately what we're going to do is that we're going to kind of learn the basics of how to work with Substance today, Substance Painter, and then next week, and it'll also give you an opportunity to catch up, hint, hint, nudge, nudge. Next week, we're going to put our models into Substance Painter and look at how we can take our final, finished, exported, retopologized mesh from Maya, pop that over into Substance Painter, and start painting on top of that, okay? Because then, we'll have a little bit of experience working in Substance from this week, and the next week we'll apply that experience on top of that existing foundation, okay? So it's going to be really fun. We're going to come back to Substance over and over and over again. It's going to be the primary central figure in our entire texturing pipeline going forward, okay? Because remember, you have another class after this, GCOM 426, okay? All the texturing in GCOM 426 is going to be done either in Painter for a local asset or in Substance Designer, okay? So it's going to be a pretty widespread use tool. There's a phenomenal community out there. I recommend to jump in. One of the fantastic things that Algorithmic is doing at the moment, and I say at the moment because they've just been purchased by Adobe, who knows what the future is going to look like, but at the moment, they're providing access to both Painter and Designer for free to students. So you can go in, you can make an account, get access to all of their fantastic tools for free, which is pretty great. So there's no reason not to start using Substance Painter at home on your PC or Mac, okay?
Is it a subscription-based, or is it like a download and you have it?
It's both. It's both, okay? For the students, it's going to be an annual kind of renewal. But as long as you're a student, it's going to be free, okay? If you start looking at it professionally, there are subscription plans that you can subscribe to. And it's really reasonable. This is not like Maya, where it's like $1,500 a year. I think it's a $19.90 for under 100,000 revenue. Yeah, it's really reasonable. It's really reasonable. It's very, very accessible, and I think that's probably one of the reasons why they're as popular as they are, is that they have grown their installation base based off of their pretty accessible price points, which is fantastic. That's how you should do it, right? That's how you should really start a new tool. So go make an account. In addition, and especially for this class, I can't recommend this enough. Definitely check out the Substance Academy. This is an online school all about their entire ecosystem. Is their beautifully made lessons and learning resources. Definitely check it out. This is going to sound silly, but it's kind of our online encyclopedia these days. But YouTube, if you just do Substance Painter in YouTube, you're going to find tens of thousands of videos that will answer the question that you're trying to get. Okay, it is that widespread of a tool. It's great. Okay. And I think that you're going to really begin to learn and love it here in a minute. So we jump in and start looking at it? Yeah, okay. All right, so let's have some fun and jump into the good old Substance Painter. So we've put Substance way down here in kind of our game tools area, right? So what we want is the one that has the circle. This is Substance Designer. Don't click on that one. That's very, very different, and the workflow is very radical and very different than what we're used to working with here in the good old Substance Painter world. Okay, so I'm going to launch Substance Painter. Okay, this is the most recent version of Substance Painter, which is pretty cool. I'm very much expecting a new version to be released at Game Developers Conference next week. So we'll see what that entails. All right, so welcome to Substance Painter. Okay, Substance Painter is an interactive 3D texture painting application. Let's start by putting some geometry in our scene, and we can start exploring how this is going to work. There's going to be two parts to this. We're going to work on a demo project called Matte, which you're going to love. It's a lot of fun, okay? And then for your homework this week, we're also going to do another demo project. It's the Jade Toad, which I also think you're really going to enjoy. You're going to be making your own custom textures for the Jade Toad, okay? So let's load in good old Matte here and start having some fun. So by going to the top of the screen, under the File pull-down menu, we can open Sample. This is going to open up a folder on your computer. And what we're looking for is good old Meat Matte. This is part of a competition that Algorithmic ran, I think last year or the year before. And it was really fantastic because everyone was asked to make their own texture for Matte, right? Let's look at Matte for a second. Say again? Open Sample, File, Open Sample. Yeah. All right. So welcome to Matt. He's going to be our friend for the next foreseeable future. A couple things, because as I look around the room, I can see that everyone's computer is behaving similarly, but maybe slightly different as well. Substance Painter, like a lot of the other apps that are in our ecosystem, they kind of hang on to some of the UI preferences from the previous session. So if yours is not looking like mine with this single viewer, okay, if yours is looking like this, for example, let's talk about how we can unify this experience. First and foremost, if your viewer looks like this, I hit the number 1 key on the top row of my keyboard, okay, and it's going to split it. We have a 3D view over here on the left. And what in the world is that thing over there? Yeah, those are UVs, okay? The game art pipeline requires UV maps. It's not optional. You got to have it. If you want to be able to play in the sandbox, it's a necessary element. So our UVs are always going to be on the right here, or they can be on the right. Let's talk about the UVs that we have, because over here in our texture set list, we can see 3 basic properties. And we're going to talk about how we physically create these texture sets next week, okay, as we start to march from Maya over into Substance Painter. Basically, they're just simple materials, which we'll talk about in detail next week, okay? But we're separating out our entire mesh here in 3 different sets, 3 different textures, okay? We have a dedicated head for the head, or dedicated texture for the head, one for the body, and of course one for the base as well. So right now, with my head texture set selected, you can see that I'm only seeing the head UV and texture information on the right. If I select the body, there's all the UVs for the body and their corresponding texture, and then of course there's the base. Okay. Let's return. I think I'm going to start with the head real fast, and we'll start getting to work here. How many of you guys have some experience with Photoshop? Great. So most everyone in here has a little bit of cursory kind of understanding to a layered-based workflow. Substance Painter builds off of that entire convention. It's pretty great. Substance Painter, in every sense, is Photoshop for 3D artists. They've taken everything that Photoshop does fantastically well, and they have outright stolen it. Maybe that's why Adobe bought them. Because they said, you know, so much of what we do is here in Substance Painter. This is a natural friend for us instead of our portfolio of applications. So this is a layered-based texturing environment. So we're painting on invisible layers of glass, okay? And let's start looking at how we can begin to take advantage of this workflow. Oh, one thing, and I apologize, I skipped over this because I just wanted to get into the texturing, so I got excited. F1 or 1 is going to split your viewport like that. Excuse me. I'm hitting the wrong keys. Wait. Excuse me. There we go. Not 1, F1 does that. F2 is just a single 3D view, and F3 is going to be the texture view. I misspoke earlier. I apologize if I confused you. So I'm going to hit the F2 key to go back to just my 3D view. The cool thing about working inside of Substance Painter is that you don't necessarily have to live in this environment, which is all that Photoshop is ever going to give you, right? Some folks like living in this world where they see both the 3D view and, of course, naturally how the texture is looking over in your UVs. That's cool. I'm good with that. I really, really am. Okay. I'm going to work in this environment. We have these wonderful big screens. Why not use them, right? And for me, as an old school 3D artist, this is what I've always wanted. I've always just wanted to be able to paint on my mesh. Okay. So I'm working on the head texture set, and let's run in and start looking at how we can work. Okay. Because we want to be able to go in and paint. But we also want to add a whole series of repeatable tiling textures, maybe flood entire areas with colors, okay? We want to be able to control exactly how our object's going to look. And the way we begin this process is in the Layers tab, way over here. Okay, so let's talk about the different types of paint layers that we can create. Because there are really two major types. And we can find those icons to create them up here at the top, okay? So we have this guy. This is called a fill layer. We'll talk about the fill here in a second. And then we also just have a blank layer. So these two are primarily going to be where we're going to go. Okay. If you ever start, we start with a basic paint layer in each one of our scenes. Okay. And with that paint layer selected, now I can go downstairs into my properties section and start establishing some really important little chunks of information. So let's break this down because there's actually 4 kind of sub areas inside the properties panel that we need to be aware of. Okay. First and foremost, these are tabs that cycle through these areas. So it's a fast way to jump around. They've kind of given us a long list of category options. Okay. So these icons help us navigate very quickly. This is the brush. This is all our brush settings. Very similar to our brush settings that we'd find over inside of Photoshop, including like the size of the stroke. FYI, here's kind of a great little trick. This icon right here is a preview, so you can actually like left click and drag and paint in it to see exactly how your brush is going to look, which is pretty cool. Okay. So we got the size values here, spacing, the angle of your brush. That's really not something important for us. There's a lot of jittering options as well. It basically is the entire brush system in Photoshop here inside of Substance Painter. In addition, we also have some stencils. More on this later. Okay. Really think of these kind of like an old school stencil for like when you're like spray painting something. Okay. It's a way for us to do local like screen space masking. Okay. We'll talk about that later. I think I'm going to get to that next week. But I wanted to start off by looking at this one. All substances have a material down at the bottom. Okay. Oops. Let me get that icon out of the way. And these materials define all the attributes that we're going to be including for the final texture set itself. I kind of lied a little bit earlier, okay, when I said that we're painting the skin color. I didn't lie. I didn't just tell you the entire truth. We're not just painting the color of this object. We're also painting the reflectivity of that object. We're also painting any sort of surface relief like bumps and grooves and scratches on that object as well. Substances are more than just color information. think of it as material attributes, characteristics of that material. So how shiny or diffuse or matte it is, how scratchy or glossy it is, okay? There's a lot that goes into it. Let me show you how this is going to start to work, okay? So these substances, these materials down here are a basic premise for us. And we're going to look at how we can start building up these materials to make some pretty advanced stuff, okay? First and foremost, in the material section, color, okay? This is the type of color, the color values that we're going to paint down. I'm not going to choose white. I'm going to go in and maybe make it a lovely shade of red, just so it's really obvious, okay? And I'm going to keep the metallic, the roughness, and the normal amount kind of off. I'm just going to turn roughness down. These are sliders, by the way. Okay, I'm going to turn all of this down, so I'm going to create just some raw color information. Okay, and now with my brush, check it out. I want to make my brush size a little bit bigger. I'm hitting the open and close brackets key on my keyboard to do that. And now I can paint on good old matte. Okay, now, of course unfortunately I don't have my Cintiq plugged in at the moment. But as I continue to paint here, you can see how not awesome of a job I'm doing. All right. But check it out. What do you see in the face of matte? A reflection, right? It illustrates quite wonderfully that this is more than just color. We're actually defining the surface characteristics of this object, okay? So we're messing with height information as well as reflectivity and the metalness of it.
So does matte come with a scene that we just can't see?
Yeah, there is an environment that you can't see that's turned off. If you'd like to explore that, I always forget where it is, but it's in here, I think. No, I'm in the wrong area, but you can turn, here it is. It's in this first one, the environment. Here's the environment map. The environment opacity is set to 0. There's the actual environment in the background, and they've blurred it a significant amount. Okay. Cool, huh?
That's just an HDR picture of the room.
You got it.
So it's like, that's not modeled.
No, it's not modeled. It's just a picture. It's just a picture. And you can change it, too, if you'd like. If you go into this environment map section, these are all the environment maps that are plugged in, and they come with a whole bunch. Absolutely. Yep. You got to put that map in a very specific folder, but it's easy to do. Super easy. All right. Let's get back to work here. I'm going to put my environment opacity back down to 0, and we can start to see the studio that that Matt's living in at the moment. Okay. Now, when we're working with just standard paint layers, it's absolutely a what you see is what you get type world, right? The current state of all of our parameters and properties down here are going to determine what's painted on our object. All right. So I'm going to change the properties here a little bit on the front. I want to go to, I don't know, a lovely shade of blue. And so now I can paint blue, but it's still reflective, okay? But now I'm going to put let's do this. Let's put roughness pretty high. Check it out. With my roughness up pretty high, all those specular reflections are being blurred out, okay? So the roughness values here in Substance Painter match what we're used to seeing in other applications. It determines how crisp and how exact the specular highlight's going to be, okay? So paint layers are absolutely what you see is what you get. The current state of the material is going to be sprayed onto your model, okay? So there's some good things about that, and there's some bad things about that. The good things about it, it is really easy to get up and running, right? I can just start blocking out some colors and some ideas pretty quickly. What are the bad, kind of the cons, the negative aspects of working with these paint layers? Going to have a lot of layers, potentially. So you have to be very careful with how we're organizing our layers stack, right? The biggest one for me is that it's destructive. It's not editable after the fact. What if I wanted to go in and change the blue?
You can't.
I can't, okay? with paint layers, they are, in every sense, a coloring book. Once we color that down, it's going to be that color no matter what.
So we have to go over it if you want to change it.
Bingo. Bingo. If we wanted to change it with a paint layer, we have to paint over it again. What's the likelihood of me being able to paint over that little blue spot on the face of Matt precisely? 0. Dominic, you had a question?
Yeah, is there just a way to I don't know, just simply change the hue afterwards if you just only have a layer specific?
Bingo. And that's the next step in this. So paint layers are okay. I use paint layers from time to time, but really, probably the best way to work, are with fill layers, They require an extra step, but if we master this extra step, oh man, let me tell you, a lot of doors are going to be opening to us very quickly. So let's change this a little bit. I'm going to turn that layer off. I'm not going to get rid of it. But now I'm going to hit the fill, the paint bucket tool. Over in Photoshop, what does this paint bucket tool do? You got it. It's going to flood an entire region with color, right?
I think I fat fingered the B key and now my dude's all rainbow.
Hit the M key. Yeah. The M key. And what you're seeing here are all the different channels.
It said there was options. It was like go to the next
Yep.
mesh map.
You got it.
And it'd say go back to the next.
Right. And specifically, you didn't hit the B key. You hit the C key most likely. Because the C key, well, I don't know, I take that back. The B, yeah, the B is showing the normal, but the C key allows us to cycle through all of those channels that are being constructed on the background. The M key, M is a material, will get us back to viewing our layer stack. All right, so let's pop in this paint bucket tool, a fill layer, and see how it's different. So I just added a fill layer. Now look at the icon here. Yeah, it's pretty rad. Let's talk about these fill layers, because in every sense, these fill layers are going to be the underpinnings of every texture that we make, because we want to be able to work non-destructively. We want to be able to go back in and art direct our texture after the fact, right? What if the client comes in and says, I like that blue, but it needs to be a different shade of blue, right? We don't want to have to repaint everything. We want to be able to very quickly, with the client or the art director sitting there, choose the color, and have everything update automatically for us. Thus, enter the awesomeness of fill layers. They work exactly the way that you'd expect them to work over in Photoshop, which in every sense defines their awesomeness. So we have flooded this entire UV map with a singular color. Right now, it's the exact same, it's the same color as the default color. However, if we were to return to our properties panel, check it out, this guy right there. Of course, the uniform color is going to allow us to pick red, and everything updates to red. So fill layers are going to flood values. With everything flooded that lovely shade of red, let's just take a second to explore what all these other properties inside our materials are ultimately giving us the ability to do. Let's start with roughness, because we saw this a little bit earlier. Roughness is going to determine the specularity of our object. If you look at the specular highlight that our rendering engine has created for us right here, if I increase the roughness, see how it's blurring out that specular highlight? And if I decrease the roughness, it makes it very crisp and very sharp. That's pretty cool, huh? So that's what roughness does. I'll put it back to a value of 0.1, which is 10%. Now, metallic is going to do something a little bit different. Maybe the best way to look at metallic, there it is. So metallic is going to make it, well, it's going to make it look like he's glowing red. Now we're doing some post-processing. You see how on Matt here we have that lovely bloom being coming. The real-time rendering engine inside of Substance is pretty good. It's actually pretty decent, better than most. At times it kind of gets in the way, right? And I think their default settings are a little maybe heavy-handed, especially when it comes to the bloom that we're seeing coming off of Matt's red head at the moment. So we're going to make one small change to that, and I apologize for coming back to the display settings. But But check it out, down here at the bottom of your display settings. So I've gone into the computer icon in my toolbar on the far right. At the very bottom here, there it is. So you can activate post effects. I'm just going to turn it off. Glare is the only one that's on at the moment. Yeah, I'm just going to turn it off. And now we can actually see what the texture set is truly producing. We're not seeing any sort of blurring or color correction by the post-processing. That glare and that bloom has gone. And now we really can get a good sense of what that metallic option is truly doing. So in my mind, the metallic option, I know it's kind of making it look like a metal, okay? But it's making, it's not changing the reflectivity of it, right? Because I can still go in and blur out the roughness. Or let me rephrase this a little bit, okay? It is determining the reflectivity, okay? But at a different aesthetic, okay? It's almost kind of making the diffuse channels more reflective. See how we're losing a lot of that diffuse color? And it's just kind of going to pure reflections at that moment. It's kind of, it's like lowering the diffuse amount and making it more reflective inside the scene. We can still continue to blur out those reflectivities by changing the roughness, okay? And now we have something that maybe looks like a kind of like anodized aluminum versus what we had before. If you look at how the specular highlight's being created, the metallic properties also have an influence on that. So just a kind of a different look. It's making it more metal. I know that seems too simple, but that's something for us to hang on to. Okay? Yeah? Is there a way to turn on? I don't know. It's tilting the whole thing. So you should be using your standard kind of Maya viewport navigation command. So I'm holding down the Option key, left mouse button, middle mouse button, right mouse button. Yours is not doing that.
I mean, it is, but it's not.
Let me see what you got. Oh,
I was having some.
yeah. I don't think there's a way to change how it rotates around the scene. I can understand and relate to your rotation problems. It does kind of put you at a weird angle from time to time. Yeah, I think the central point at where it rotates needs to be a little bit more customizable, in my opinion. All right, so these fill layers are pretty fantastic. They're great, okay? Because now we can non-destructively go back in and make changes.
Is there a way to reset like the preset of the brush that you have? Or?
Yeah, absolutely. There is a lot of options, and so you're trying to reset these in here? Yeah. So if you were to go back into your library down here at the bottom, of course there's the brushes section. You can load in any number of brushes that you want, right? I can do this artistic one, and now I can paint, if I turn it on. Of course, it's underneath my fill, so I'm not seeing it. But now I can use that artistic section, right? There's also a basic hard and basic soft. These are the defaults, right? So if you double click on basic soft, now the brush is going to perform exactly how it did before. Yep. All right. So I've just changed my layer stack a little bit, and you can see that I'm getting some pretty interesting results, okay? But maybe I want to change it from red to green. I don't know why, right? Red to gold, that fill layer. How do I do it?
You go back to the fill layer and then you go to the fill color.
You got it. So now I can just return, change the base color to anything I want, and it updates. Okay, that's the power of these fill layers, is that they're truly non-destructive. Yeah.
I wasn't raising my hands.
Oh, you weren't raising your hand. Okay.
So
Yeah.
I know you showed how to make it less reflective. What if mine isn't as reflective as I want it to be, even if I turn the roughness all the way down and the metallic all the way up? Is that just a color situation?
It could be a color situation. Yep.
Yeah.
That's a little bit better. This is the kind of the beauty of this real-time rendering software is it really is a what you see is what you get. So it allows us to art direct and make some. Yeah. Yeah, you know, a black shiny object is going to be difficult to see the reflections on. So, all right. So the next thing I want to talk about when it comes to fill layers is how to extend their functionality to give us more control. Because what if I only want to have it be gold, like in the center? Okay? I don't want the entire head to be gold. I only want, maybe I'm making like a silly face for a map. Okay? And I want to be able to paint, you know, 2 gold eyeballs and a gold smiley face, just really kind of stupidly. Okay? Well, check it out. Here's what I'm going to do. First and foremost, I want to put it on top of layer number 1. And now I'm going to mask it. Okay? Masking inside of Substance Painter is the core of our entire world. We want to use masks as much as we can. Okay? Because the masking engine is basically going to allow us to interactively choose where we want this fill layer to appear. Okay? And since it's a mask, a non-destructive black and white transparency mask, the mask is also non-destructive. Okay? Let's explore how we can use these masks and how we can apply it. It's pretty simple. I'm going to go back over into my layers stack. Oops, excuse me. And if you right-click on the layer itself, you get this crazy contextual menu. But the first 4 options are probably the most important. We add a white mask, a black mask, a bitmap mask, and add mask with color selection. We're going to focus on number 2 here. Okay? The idea of masking is something that we see in a lot of image editing applications. A mask is truly just a black and white image that defines the transparency of the layer that it's connected to. Okay? So I'm going to add a black and white image to my fill layer, and that black and white image is going to determine the visibility of that layer. Okay? It's a transparency mask. It's a transparency image. We're going to be, wherever we have black pixels in our mask, okay, so I just added a black mask. Wherever we have black pixels on our mask, that part of that layer is invisible. Wherever we have white pixels on the mask, those areas of that layer are going to be opaque. They're going to be visible. So let's go in and start painting on our mask. Okay. Now, real fast here, it's really important to point out that we need to make sure that our mask is selected. We can't have, excuse me, just turn it off. We can't have the fill layer selected, and now I'm working on the mask. Okay. So I'm going to paint on that mask.
So is all of the colors supposed to?
Yep. Because we flooded that entire UV set with black pixels. And now we're going to turn certain things on, right? Or we could do the opposite. We could add a white mask, and we'll see everything, and then we'll turn certain things off with black. So I flooded that entire UV set with black pixels for that layer. And now I'm going back down over here into my properties. And the first section is going to be my brush stuff. We'll come back to that here in a minute. But way down here at the bottom, under this grayscale channels, this is how we determine which color we're going to be painting with in the mask itself. Notice this says grayscale. It's a great way to know very directly what type of image you're working on. Okay? We're working on a mask. It's only ever going to be black and white. Black is off, white is on, right? The black pixels are transparent, the white pixels are opaque. So right now, I'm painting with white. The little slider goes all the way to the right. And check it out. Now I'm painting some gold. Like I said, here's my silly little face. Okay? And notice that it's retaining all of the material properties of the fill layer, of which I could very easily go change just by selecting the fill layer and changing maybe its basic color to green or whatever that is. There it is. And now I have green reflective smiley faces versus the opposite. Okay? Pretty neat, huh? Pretty neat. So here's what I want you to do just for the next 5 or 10 minutes. Paint a face for Matt. Have your face look however you like. We're going to continue to add some functionality on top of this, but let's start with the face, and then we're going to go down to the body, and then we're going to work our way down to the stand, well down there at the bottom. Okay? Ready, set, go. Let's get to work. Yeah. apologize. I think my battery is going to die here soon. Okay, so one other real quick thing here. So I've gone ahead and I've added just a red fill layer, okay? But we wanted to be able to do more than just paint color, right? The cool thing about participating inside of the Substance Playground is its ability to add images, other photographs, as a member of our entire Substance network, okay? So we're going to slowly dip our toe into this a little bit and expose truly the power of working inside of this Substance architecture, okay? So I'm going to stay on the head here for a second, the red head. Now I'm using the base color here as red, right? But remember, I have 3 other channels that I get to play with. Now right now, we're only using these sliders to globally control the amount of reflectivity or the metalness, right? However, we can load images into those channels to further modulate the illusion that we're getting. And I'm just going to stay here on Matt's head, on his face, because it gives us a really great planar surface to explore all this, okay? All right, check it out. So instead of painting, what if we load an image in to these channels, okay? Let me show you what I'm talking about. This is pretty neat. I want to hang out in my library because it's probably most easily seen in my library. This library has a whole bunch of stuff, and I'm going to go over into the procedural section, which I love, by the way. Okay? Pop quiz, does anyone know what a procedural texture is?
It's seamless.
So it's seamless, so we're never going to see when the pattern repeats, right? How is it created and generated? And I apologize, my microphone battery just died, so I'm going to work off my laptop battery. But I want this to be part of the live stream because it's pretty great. Okay, so I'm going to load in a procedural texture and go shopping. Right, there are a bunch. You can also create your own. This icon here allows you to change the thumbnail size. I do that. My eyes are getting old, so I always make it large. And let's do this. Let's do something fun, something very noticeable, like this medieval fabric one. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take that procedural, and I'm going to left-click and drag it into my roughness channel. Okay? Now watch where I drag it inside of my application. I'm going to drag it right there. So this word, I mean, this is more than just a word. Okay? This is a place where we can place textures and load textures into that channel. And watch what happens when I put that image into my roughness slider. Let's see. At times, it's a little difficult to see. Yeah. I dragged and dropped it. I'll do it again. Let's do it on a different one, just so everyone can see what's going on. How about, I don't know, we'll do this houndstooth one. That's kind of fun. A little difficult to see. I'll go back to the one I was working on just because it's a little bit easier to see. I'm dragging and dropping it into my roughness channel. Now, can you guys see that? Is it difficult to see? And I apologize because it is subtle, right? But check it out. The roughness determines the amount of specularity on this texture set, right? I now loaded a black and white image into that channel. Where it's white, the roughness equals 1.0, so not specular. Where that image was black, the roughness now equals 0. Highly reflective, right? And where it's gray, we're getting small changes in value, okay? So let's put another image in here as an example and see if we can continue to create a real complex result. FYI, the tab key, which is what I just did, the tab key maximizes your viewport, make it a little bit easier for you guys in the back to see. So now, with this in mind, I'm gonna go find like a good grunge map. I love me some grunges. Like this dirt splats for me. I'm gonna left click and drag that into my roughness channel again, and voila, check that action out. Now it looks like the surface has been beat up a little bit. Now it looks like the surface has some micro scratches on the front, right? It's not just a flat, red, shiny material. It's got some life and some character into it. Okay? Shoot, let's do this again with a different one, but we're going to load it into, let's load it into the metallic. We'll do this grunge, I'll just do the grunge dirt heavy. I have no idea what, yeah, look at that. That's a pretty complex texture result with just a couple, let's just a couple mouse clicks. So what it's doing now is that it's flooding that entire texture set with an image. A seamlessly tiling image that goes all the way around good old matte. This is how we create very complex photorealistic results very simply and very quickly. Let's extend this a little bit more, because now that these channels are open for mask or open for images, maybe if we incorporate this into our masking pipeline, we can get some wicked, complex, and controllable results. Check it out. It's pretty fun. Let's just do it real fast. I'm actually going to get rid of these two images on my red fill layer. I'm going to exit out on metallic, and on the roughness channel, I'm also going to exit out and kind of get me back to my basic starting point that I had a second ago. Check this. This is neat. I'm going to add an additional fill layer now, and I'm simply going to make it blue. I'll hit the paint bucket icon. With it selected, I'll go down to the properties and change its base color to a lovely shade of blue. There we go. That's good enough for me. I want to mask the blue. How do I do it? So I want to be able to control where the blue goes. Yep. So we right click, and I'm going to add a black mask. You're more than welcome to encourage to add a white mask. It doesn't matter how you start. I like to turn everything off and then have it interactively turn on. So check it out. I want to be able to load an image into this mask slot. Okay. However, down here at the bottom, it doesn't really give me an option to do that. Load that in. See how it doesn't really, it's like, where's my mask? I should be saying blue. We got to do one small thing. I apologize. I hit undo too many times. We're going to add a black mask, okay? And now we're going to add a fill effect to that mask. This is cool. And we do that with the magic wand, okay? These are effects. And I'm going to choose add fill. Because once we have kind of like a fill property of a mask, we can load that fill property with an image and have it automatically mask based off the contents, the black and white content of that image. Now check it out. It's see how it looks a little different now? Kind of looks purpley. It's not, you know, that's the original color. That's with it off. The default color is 50%, but I have this grayscale value, and here will now accept an image. Bloop. Voila. Now we're masking on an image, right? The black and white color values of that image are determining where that blue shows up. Okay? The cool thing about working with procedurals, as I mentioned before, is that I get to change the parameters of the algorithm, which is going to then change how it shows up here on my texture. Check this out. There's even a seed. It's on random. I can go in and put a new seed in here. And change, I don't know, what am I going to do? I'll just add 5. Change the pattern, I think. But we can change the balance of it. So now we're kind of doing like an interactive layers call. Maybe I just want a little bit of blue in there and kind of chipped. That's kind of neat. Can also change the contrast, which is going to make the edges more sharp or less blurred. Can flip it. We're in control here, which is kind of neat. This particular procedural doesn't have a lot of values that we can adjust. Let's go back for a second to something fun like this one. This is a fun one. Whoa, way too big. These little bone shapes are kind of neat. If I increase the tile parameter, yeah, that's pretty neat. Okay, you even do the balance. I'm not sure what the balance is going to do. Make little pins. Pretty cool, huh? So we can load images into all of our material channels, and we can load images as kind of a driver, if you will, of a mask, which extends the functionality and the power very, very directly of this object. Okay. One last thing about these effects layers, and then I'll let you continue to explore them, okay, as we work on the body. Oops, I'm all zoomed in, which is why it's not letting me change it. All right. So we were able to add on this mask this fill property, okay? But what if my art director comes in and says, Pat, you know, I love what you're doing here. The shape is really cool, but I can't have this little bone texture right in here. I got to have it everywhere else, but just in that one little divot, I got to turn that bone, that blue bone texture off. These paint effects are stackable. So here's the fill layer, its corresponding mask. Notice that when I have the fill layer selected, we don't see the properties of the mask. We only see all the drivers of that mask until we click on it. So here's the image, that fill image that I just put in. Check it out. I want to put in another one. I want to put an additional paint effect in. This is a stack. So we're flooding the entire image with the bone texture. But now I have the ability to go in and paint. I want to make sure it's selected. There it goes. And I don't want to use the image. I want to use just a color. I'm going to use black. I'm going to reset my brush too, because my brush is set to one of the grunge brushes that I was working with before. Okay, so now with a black brush, I can go in and say, hey, I don't want that blue bone in here. Because I'm painting over, I'm adding black pixels, I'm interactively adding black pixels to my mask through this custom layer. And I kind of messed up. Oops, that's okay. Now, instead of painting with black, if I wanted it back, I just paint with white, and it comes back. Or, in this case, I'm painting everything white, so I'm just going to undo. The X key, by the way, is a good one to memorize. It flips back and forth between pure black and pure white. And I'm doing this with the mouse, so I'm going to be horrible at it. There we go. And now I've interactively changed my mask. I didn't need to go in and add more red. I needed to interactively control where the blue is going to go with a stacked layered effect. Isn't that neat? Boom. That's pretty great. Okay. Well, shoot, let's take this one step further, right? Maybe I want to have just that one little divot in here be like chrome or something, right? You know, really shiny, you know, kind of metallic, silvery metallic. This is how we could do it, okay? Add another fill. We're just going to flood it in. I like to define my fill parameters pretty early on. So I want it to be pretty reflective, maybe a little bit more metallic. Don't like that color. I want it to be darker. I want to make it very reflective. That's a good place to go. Ooh, now we're getting somewhere. Maybe a little too dark. Okay. Add the mask. Now I'm going to paint. Of course, I'm never going to do this with a paintbrush very well. Which brings us to the next part. How do we control our masks? The paint system is fantastic. It really is. But at times, I maybe would like some accuracy in here. You know, a lot of this stuff happens where I'm both, excuse me, I apologize, where I'm painting on two different surfaces at the exact same time. What if I just want to paint over here on those polygons? Can we extend the entire system a little bit to be aware of polygons? Yeah, okay? It's not just about our skill with a brush, okay? We can also ask the computer to go in and paint on polygons or to mask on polygons. And it's really quite easy to do that. Let me show you how to do it real fast, okay? I want to hit undo a couple steps to get rid of that gray that I want to have go in here. And we do this. Here's our tools. This is the paintbrush tool, the eraser tool. This one, what is that one? Oh, this is the projection tool. More on that next week. It has a role. But the fourth one is really important, okay? This fourth one, this is the polygon fill tool. And if you look at its parameters, immediately above us in our toolbar, we can paint on individual triangles, polygons, the entire mesh, or specific UV islands. UV chunks. Okay, so let's do this real quick. It's pretty cool. With the Polygon Fill tool on, check it out. You can see behind me that the computer has activated the wireframes for this. Okay, and now I'm painting with white, so I just need to click. I'm zoomed in, so it's not going to work. There we go. I'm clicking and dragging. And see how it's just masking those polygons? Now, if there's one criticism of Substance Painter, it's this. It's a good thing and a bad thing. I really want a lasso selection type because getting into corners sometimes can be tricky. All a polygon needs to do in order to be masked is just touch that box. So I don't have to completely surround that box with my guy. I can just click and drag on the inside of it. But a portion of that selection box needs to touch the polygon that I'm working with. The other thing that I don't like, and I wish they would change, see how it's selecting through the mesh? That's something that I really hate. So when I left click and drag, it's selecting through the mesh, and it's actually masking this stuff over here, which I don't like, right? It's a problem for me. So the way to resolve that, or the way that I know how to resolve it, and if anyone else knows anything different, you get a single left click on all the polygons that you want to get masked out. I really, really, really just want them to turn off the select through. That'd make my life a whole lot easier. The other option that I find incredibly, incredibly valuable when it comes to the Polygon Fill tool is being able to mask at the UV level, okay? Because now it's going to look at an entire UV island and mask on the boundaries of that island, which is pretty powerful. I want to hit the number F1 key on my keyboard, and you can see that we have a number of different UV islands in my map itself. We have this guy, which is likely the front. This. Yes, you can. Or look online. There's a couple extra steps that you have to go through, Taylor, to make it emissive. But the answer to that question is absolutely. You have to change the default shader to the emissive one, but it's really easy to do that. Yeah, it's pretty great. All right. Questions on how to work with images and how to mask with the Polygon Fill tool. Everyone's good. Everyone's feeling it for the most part. Okay, cool. Don't do the particle paint thing. Like that's probably the most unusable feature in the entire app. I gave Matt the veins. Yeah, yeah. I'm sure the particle paint tool. It's neat. It's neat. Let's just put it that way. I'm not sure how applicable it is. Let's just put it that way.
How do you turn a stencil off?
The easiest way to turn a stencil off. So when you are painting, you put your own stencil in your brush.
Yeah.
Yeah. The easiest way, and let's see if I can replicate it here. Okay. So you went down here into your stencil. Okay. So if I put that as my stencil, okay. FYI, I was not going to talk about this today, but since I'm here, I'll just do it real fast. The S key, if you hold down the S key, and then middle mouse button, you can move your stencil. Right mouse button will allow you to change it, and the left mouse button will allow you to rotate it. FYI. Okay. If you want to get rid of it, just hit the X arrow. Okay. And now your brush is back. So the stencil is loaded down here in the stencil channel. And then to get rid of it, just remove it. Like that. All right, let's take a break. Okay, so there's one more thing that I want to show you. This is actually something that's pretty neat about working inside of Substance. The whole purpose behind this application is to make textures for our images, right? But there's also a really great little rendering engine in there as well, right? And I want you guys to be exposed to this rendering engine and start to use this rendering engine because it actually can make our pipeline a little bit easier. If you want to send a draft of your textures to someone on your team or a client just to kind of get a good idea of where we're going, then it's great to be able to take a picture or to make a picture right here in Substance Painter that's of pretty high quality and good resolution. So the last part of this that we're going to talk about today is how to take or how to make a picture using iRay, the rendering engine inside of Substance Painter. And it's a pretty rudimentary rendering engine. It doesn't have all the bells and whistles of Arnold or Renderman, okay? But it's a pretty good one, okay? Especially given the intent as to of the rendering engine. And how we get into it is this little camera icon in the upper right-hand corner of our viewport. That's going to enable the iRay rendering engine. It's pretty easy to get going with this, right? Here it is. And now you can see that our render is taking on a new different light. We're seeing shadows. We're seeing a shadow catcher on the ground. I would really encourage you to go over and explore all of your display settings here, which will change how the render is going to look, okay? So, like, for example, one of the things that you can very quickly and easily do is that you can put the environment back in. Let's see. I don't have it on. Oh, sphere with ground. Now let's do. Well, I paused it. That's why. Let's unpause and unhook the iRay rendering system. When iRay is going, it's just kind of like always going. So you can compose your shot. You can change some things here. Let's see if I can get the studio back. I'm not sure why my environment map has been overridden by. It's this. It's the dome. Let's turn this sphere with ground. The clear color, that's the ground. We get to determine. So just play around with it. There's a lot of cool parameters in here that will make this a pretty powerful system itself. I'm going to hit undo. I'm going to pause the render because it does kind of take over your machine while it's rendering. Because it is trying to create, this is called a progressive renderer, right? There are no buckets. It's just you hit the start button and it's going to continue to render and draw and render and draw for as long as it wants. Okay, so make your changes first. Okay, and then when you're happy, and sometimes I like doing these things down here at the bottom. Where is it? Yeah, activate subsurface scattering. This is kind of cool. Especially when you have materials that are trying to look like skin and what have you. Also, activate the post effects. This is also another really great thing for you to add in. This is when you want to have that glare come in and be a factor of your final render itself. Let's unhook or unleash the rendering engine again by hitting the gigantic pause button and see how my render's changed. It does take a couple seconds. You can use your default navigation commands. There we go. There we go. So how do you know when your render's done? Okay. Well, there's a couple parameters in here that you want to look at. Like I said, this is what's called a progressive render. So we set up all the parameters and then we hit go, and it's just going to render kind of like in the background. As long as none of the parameters of the progressive renderer change, then it's just going to kind of keep chugging. Okay. The way to know for sure that your render is finished is two things. First and foremost, see this as rendering time. The default settings are going to get us to 13 minutes and 20 seconds. So, 13 minutes or so, this render will be finished. Okay. It will also say on the status line here, render complete. So it really is, you just hit the go button, you walk away, go have lunch, come back in 20 minutes or so, and your render will be finished. Okay. And it's going to be a good looking render. Okay. If you want to change some of these parameters, definitely check it out. This max time in seconds is something to look at. Maybe you just want a real quick 10-second render. Change that value real fast. Okay. In addition, you can also continue to increase the quality by increasing the samples. Okay, it's going to make your render take longer, but the quality will be better. A lot of that grain, a lot of this. See, all my shadows are nice and crisp now. A second ago, they were real grainy, right? That's because it kept rendering. Okay, it kept progressively adding more information into the image that was going to be created. Okay, let's do depth of field is always fun. Depth of field is a little hard to control, but you can go in and you got to figure out the focus distance, the aperture. If we put it to like, oops, let me pause the render. But point being, just play around with it. There's some really great things in here that will make you allow you to get some really great pictures. Okay. So at the end of your homework assignment this week, you're going to be submitting and providing to me in the Dropbox a render from Substance Painter, from iRay, of your finished model. Okay. Of the jade toad, and we'll talk about that here in a second. To save your render, it really is as easy as going up to the top, save render. Let's make it a test. You can actually change the image type too. I'm going to leave it as JPEG. And then put it on the desktop. Yep, there it is. There's my picture, saved out of Substance Painter. Okay. This is the best way to make a render of your object. Okay, the render of your character, render of map, what have you. It's really kind of straightforward. It's simple. It's simple. Is it slow? Yeah, it's slow. Okay, but every rendering engine is slow. This is not much slower than what we have in other places. Okay. All right, for your homework this week, it's two things. Many of you guys just need to catch up. Retopologizing and making UV maps takes some time. Okay, so I want you to continue working on that. However, we do have a homework assignment, and that's the jade toad. If we go back into Substance Painter, I want you guys to start getting used to and getting comfortable with the process of working inside of Substance Painter and creating custom texture sets. Okay, I'm going to exit out of my iRay by once again clicking on that camera icon, and the jade toad is a sample. Open sample. Okay. Don't save. Here's the jade toad. Okay. Now, the jade toad is a really, really fun one. Okay. It already has some really great starting points and some really great textures in there. You're not to use any of these, right? I want you to make your own texture set for the jade toad. Be as creative as you can. Make your toad look like anything you want, right? There's no wrong way of doing this. Let me turn off some of my my post-processing here. There we go. There it is. Now we can see it a little bit more directly. Okay. Ta-da! Oh, one thing. I forgot to mention this, and I apologize. If you want to change the environment, see how I'm rotating the environment? It's Shift right mouse button. Sometimes the environment map makes it difficult to see what it is that you're painting on. Shift right mouse button will allow you to go in and basically rotate the environment map. Okay? You're more than welcome and encouraged to change the environment map. This one's pretty difficult to see what's going on. Maybe something a little bit more flat. Yep. Studio 2. Yep. That one's fun. So change it to whatever you think you need. That one's cool. And start getting to work. Okay? So here's what I want you to do for your homework. Just take all of this stuff and just delete it. Okay? Just get it back down to nothing. And then you start painting on top of it. Yeah. Okay. So one other thing about working with Substance Painter, and this is something that you'll definitely need to manage as you start to add this this new part into our pipeline. When you do file save, and I'm going to do file save as, okay, make sure you give it a good name. This is going to be Pat's Toad, okay. Substance Painter works a little bit differently, the file does at least, than what we're used to seeing in Maya or Moto or even Unity and Unreal, okay. That project file, the SPP, the Substance Painter project file, is now a briefcase for everything that you've incorporated into your texture set, okay? it's going to get big, okay? The more layers you have, the more images that you include in your layer stack is going to have a direct impact on the size of this file. Warning. Indigo's shaking her head because Indigo and I have done a lot of Substance Painter stuff. These can get into the gigabytes of size, okay? However, you know this now. You're going to have to manage big files.
So they're big, but this means we don't have to take extra steps to make sure that files, like image maps and custom like viewport settings are saved to the project file. It just doesn't.
It's all in there. They've made it easy. They've made it easy. It's a give and take. Yeah, it's a give and take. So just be aware that that file is going to get big. So big that I don't want you to submit it for your homework.
That's good.
Yeah, I just want a render. I just want that IRA render for your toad. Okay? I don't want the SPP file because it's going to be a gig in size. Because it's holding on to a lot of texture information. The resolution, you're not making just one image. You're behind the scenes, there's about a dozen different images that are being created and managed by the application, and that just takes some hard drive space. Okay? So have fun with the toad. It's a tremendous amount of fun. You know, this is ripe for a lot of opportunity. Be artists, be creative, and start getting used to working with this tool set. There's a lot more to explore on the Jade or in Substance Painter. This is not our only conversation about this. We're going to continue this next week as well, okay? As a personal goal, okay, I would ensure that by next week you have your character done, okay? Have it retopologized, have it UV'd, because next week we are going to be using that source information that we initially started a month ago, and we're going to finalize it and create the final textures for that object, okay? And then, in all honesty, we're going to upload it to Sketchfab too, which is going to be kind of fun. All right? Yeah. Because they have free student accounts, and we should use it. It's a fun process. It's once you put your objects online, you're able to rotate them around in 3D. They become real, right? They become real, living, breathing things. So we'll be looking at that as well. So you know, the map project file that we're working on today, that's just to kind of get us up and running. Your official homework is your Jade Toad. All right? So let's get to work.